Annabella's hands trembled as she gripped the knife, her knuckles white against the handle. The blade caught the dim warehouse light as she faced the three men circling her like wolves. Blood trickled from a cut above her eyebrow, warm and sticky, but she refused to blink. Behind her, slumped against metal crates, lay Marcus, her supposed bodyguard, unconscious and useless. If you think you know where this is going, you do not. Hit the subscribe button because the story is about to get insane.
Drop it, girl. Mr. Chen wants his money. Your father's debt transfers to you now.
My father is dead. You killed him 3 days ago.
Then you pay with your money or something else.
She lunged before he finished speaking, the movement instinctive from weeks of running, hiding, fighting to survive in Shanghai's underbelly. The knife connected with his shoulder, and he howled. The other two rushed her simultaneously. Anabella kicked sideways, her heel connecting with a kneecap, but the third man grabbed her hair and yanked backward. The knife clattered to the concrete floor. This is it, she thought. 22 years old and about to die in a foreign country because her father couldn't stop gambling. Then the warehouse door exploded inward. The sound was deafening, with splintering, metal shrieking. The man holding her hair released her instantly, and Anabella collapsed to the ground, gasping. Through the settling dust, she saw a figure walking through the destroyed entrance with the calm precision of someone attending a business meeting. He was older, much older, perhaps in his early 60s, with silver-streaked black hair combed back from a face carved from granite. He wore an immaculate navy suit that probably cost more than her father's gambling debts. But it was his eyes that paralyzed her attackers. Cold, calculating, absolutely devoid of mercy. 6 men flanked him, each holding weapons they didn't bother to conceal.
What is your name?
My name is Anabella. Anabella Okonkwo.
Anabella, you have remarkable survival instincts. Most people would have frozen or begged. You fought.
Fighting is all I have left.
Something that might have been approval crossed his face. He turned to his men. Remove Chen's dogs from my district. Make sure Chen understands the boundaries of his operations going forward. The attackers were dragged away without ceremony, leaving bloody trails. Marcus groaned and began to stir. Zhang ignored him entirely, his attention fixed on Anabella. Your father's debt, he said slowly, is now mine. I purchased it from Chen an hour ago. Annabella's stomach dropped. Why? Because I could. He tilted his head, studying her like she was an artifact in a museum. And because I have a proposal that benefits us both. I have nothing to give you. No money, no family, nothing. On the contrary. Zhang stepped closer until she could smell his cologne, something woody and expensive. You have yourself, as that fool correctly identified before I broke his jaw. But not in the way he meant. Annabella's hand twitched toward the fallen knife, but Zhang's bodyguard was faster, kicking it away. I'm not a prostitute, she said through clenched teeth. No, Zhang agreed. You're going to be my wife. The world tilted sideways. Anabella actually laughed, a hysterical sound that bounced off the warehouse walls. You're insane. I'm practical. Zhang's expression remained neutral, but his eyes gleamed with an intensity that made her breath catch. I'm 63 years old, Anabella. I've built an empire that spans 3 countries and controls half of Shanghai's import operations. I have enemies who would celebrate my death and allies who would betray me for the right price. I've never married because marriage is a vulnerability I couldn't afford. Then why? Because I'm tired. The admission seemed to surprise him as much as her. And because watching you fight 3 men with a kitchen knife while bleeding from your head reminded me that survival requires more than money and power. It requires fire. You want to marry me because I'm desperate enough to be dangerous? Anabella shook her head, ignoring the dizzy spell the movement caused. That's the worst reason I've ever heard. I want to marry you because you're strong enough to survive in my world, young enough to give me an heir, and desperate enough to accept protection in exchange for security. Zhang pulled out a silk handkerchief and, before she could protest, gently dabbed at the blood on her forehead. The gesture was surprisingly tender. Your father's debt is 300,000 yuan. I'll forgive it entirely. I'll also provide housing, education, and complete financial security. In exchange, you marry me, produce an heir, and stand beside me as my wife in public. And in private? The question escaped before she could stop it. Zhang's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. In private, we negotiate our own terms. Anabella wanted to refuse. Every instinct screamed to run, to escape this strange man with his cold eyes and impossible proposal. But where would she run? Her father's apartment had been seized. Her visa was expiring in 2 weeks. Chen's men would keep hunting her, and next time there might not be a silver-haired stranger to crash through the door. How do I know you won't just kill me once you're bored? You don't, Zhang said honestly. But consider this, I could have let Chen's men take you. I could have purchased your debt and demanded immediate payment you couldn't provide. Instead, I'm offering you a choice. This isn't a choice. It's a trap dressed in expensive silk. Perhaps. But it's a trap with room to breathe. He stepped back, giving her space. I'll have my doctor treat that wound. You have 24 hours to decide. If you refuse, I'll forgive the debt anyway and arrange safe passage back to Nigeria. If you accept, we marry within the week. Anabella stared at him, this strange, powerful man who'd just upended her entire existence. Why would you forgive the debt if I refuse? Because, Zhang said quietly, I respect strength. And forcing someone into marriage is the action of a weak man desperate for control. I'm neither weak nor desperate. He turned to leave, his bodyguards falling into formation around him. At the shattered doorway, he paused. My driver will take you to a hotel. Rest. Eat. Think carefully, Anabella Okonkwo. Whatever you decide it for yourself. Then he was gone, leaving her standing in the warehouse 23 hours later. Anabella stood outside blood on her face Shanghai hotel wearing a borrowed decision weighing on her chest, carrying a small bag containing everything she owned. Her hands had stopped shaking somewhere around hour 12, replaced by a strange calm that felt like resignation and determination mixed together. The hotel lobby was all marble and gold, the kind of place where her father had once dreamed of gambling. A young woman in an elegant qipao approached immediately. Miss Okonkwo? Mr. Zhang is expecting you in the private dining room. Anabella followed her through corridors that smelled of jasmine and money, her worn shoes squeaking slightly on the polished floor. The dining room was smaller than expected, intimate, with a single table set for two and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the illuminated Shanghai skyline. Zhang stood by the window, still in a suit though this one was charcoal gray instead of navy. He turned as she entered, and something shifted in his expression when he saw her. You came. I came. Anabella set her bag down, lifted her chin. I have conditions. Of course you do. Was that approval in his voice? Sit. Let's negotiate. She sat, hyper-aware of how out of place she looked in this gilded room. Zhang took the seat across from her, folded his hands on the table, and waited. First, Anabella said, forcing her voice to remain steady, I want to finish my degree. I had 2 years left before my father's gambling destroyed everything. Business administration. Agreed. I'll arrange enrollment at Fudan University. Next. The easy acceptance surprised her. I want to learn Mandarin properly. And self-defense. Both essential. I'll hire tutors for Mandarin and a personal trainer for combat skills. What else? Anabella hesitated on this next part. I want time. Before the marriage is consummated. Time to adjust, to not feel like I'm being forced. Zhang finished for her, his voice soft. Anabella, let me be absolutely clear. I will never touch you without your explicit consent. Whatever arrangement we have, whatever heirs we may produce, happens only when and if you're ready. I'm acquiring a wife, not purchasing a slave. The knot in her chest loosened slightly. Then yes, I'll marry you. Just like that. Just like that. She met his eyes directly. You saved my life yesterday. You could have demanded anything and I'd have no choice. Instead, you gave me a choice. That's more than anyone else has offered me in months. Zhang studied her for a long moment, then reached across the table. His hand was warm, dry, scarred across the knuckles. Then we have an agreement, Anabella. I'll give you my protection, my resources, and my name. In return, you'll give me your strength, your presence, and eventually, I hope, your trust. She took his hand. His grip was firm but not crushing. I can't promise love. Love is for romantics and fools, Zhang said, though something in his eyes suggested he didn't entirely believe that. Respect and partnership are far more valuable. The wedding happened 6 days later in a private ceremony that barely qualified as a wedding. 12 people attended Zhang's lawyer, his head of security, 2 witnesses Anabella had never met, and a judge who spoke for exactly 7 minutes before declaring them married. Anabella wore a simple white dress that Zhang's assistant had selected. Zhang wore another perfect suit. He placed a platinum band on her finger that was heavier than anything she'd ever worn. When the judge said he could kiss the bride, Zhang merely lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles, a gesture that felt more intimate than a kiss might have been. "Hello, Mrs. Zhang," he murmured. "Hello, husband," she replied, testing the word. It felt foreign in her mouth. His penthouse occupied the entire top floor of one of Shanghai's most exclusive buildings. Floor-to-ceiling windows displayed the city like a painting. The furniture was minimal, modern, expensive. Everything was grays and blacks and whites, sharp lines and cold surfaces. "Your room," Zhang said, opening a door to reveal a bedroom larger than her father's entire apartment. "Mine is across the hall. You have complete privacy. The staff knows not to enter without permission." Anabella stepped inside. The bed was enormous, covered in silk sheets. A door led to a bathroom with a tub that could fit 3 people. The closet was already full of clothes in her size. "How did you?" "I'm very thorough when I commit to something," Zhang said from the doorway. He made no move to enter her space. "Rest tonight. Tomorrow your new life begins." But Anabella couldn't rest. She stood by the window for hours, watching Shanghai pulse and glow beneath her, trying to reconcile the woman she'd been yesterday with the woman she'd become today. Mrs. Zhang. Wife to a man older than her father would have been. A stranger in every way that mattered. Around midnight, she heard movement in the hallway and opened her door cautiously. Zhang stood by the windows in the main living area, jacket discarded, tie loosened, holding a glass of amber liquid. He looked older in the dim light, the lines around his eyes more pronounced, but also more human. Less like the ice-cold businessman who'd crashed into that warehouse. "Can't sleep?" he asked without turning around. "Too much has changed too fast." Anabella approached slowly, maintaining distance. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Yesterday you said watching me fight reminded you that survival requires fire. What did you mean?" Zhang took a slow sip of his drink. "I meant that I've spent 40 years building walls around myself. Layer after layer of protection, wealth, power. Somewhere in that process, I forgot what it felt like to actually fight for something. To have that desperation that sharpens your instincts and makes you dangerous. And you think marrying me will remind you?" "I think," he said carefully, finally turning to face her, "that you might remind me what it means to be alive rather than simply surviving." He studied her face in the dim light. "You're afraid of me." It wasn't a question. Anabella considered lying, then decided against it. "Yes. Good." At her shocked expression, he continued, "Fear means you're smart." "I am dangerous, Anabella. I've done things that would horrify you. I've made decisions that cost lives. Being afraid of that reality is appropriate." "Then why did you marry me?" "Because I'm also tired of being alone," Zhang said quietly. "And because when I saw you fighting in that warehouse, bleeding and terrified but refusing to give up, I thought perhaps here is someone who might understand what it costs to survive. Someone who might not judge me for the monster I've had to become." The raw honesty in his voice cracked something in Anabella's chest. She moved closer, close enough to see the flecks of gray in his dark eyes, the thin scar along his jawline. "I'm not good at being someone's wife," she admitted. "I don't know how to be what you need. Then we'll figure it out together." Zhang set down his glass, and with a gentleness that contradicted everything she knew about him, he reached out and tucked a stray curl behind her ear. "Sleep, Anabella. Tomorrow we start building something new." She went back to her room but didn't sleep for hours. When she finally drifted off, she dreamed of warehouses and silver-haired strangers and choices that changed everything. Morning brought reality crashing back. Zhang was gone before she woke, leaving only a note. Classes start at 9. My driver will take you to the university. Dinner at 7. Be ready to talk. The driver was a stoic man named Shin who spoke no English and drove like he was being chased. Fudan University was sprawling and intimidating, but Zhang had apparently arranged everything. Her enrollment was complete, her tuition paid for 3 years, her schedule optimized. Her classmates stared at the African woman in their business administration program, but Anabella was used to being stared at. She took notes, asked questions, and tried not to think about the platinum ring on her finger. The Mandarin tutor arrived at 4. A patient elderly woman named Mrs. Lin who spoke slowly and corrected gently. The combat trainer appeared at 5, a compact muscular man named Wei who assessed her with professional detachment. Mr. Zhang says you have instincts but no training, Wei said in accented English. We fixed that. First lesson, if you're going to use a knife, commit to the strike. Hesitation gets you killed. He didn't ask why she needed combat training. In Zhang's world, apparently, everyone needed to know how to fight. By the time 7 o'clock approached, Anabella was exhausted. She'd showered and changed into one of the dresses from her new closet, a deep blue that made her dark skin glow, and waited in the dining room where staff had set another intimate table. Zhang arrived exactly at 7, still in his business attire but with his tie removed. He looked tired but pleased. How was your first day as a student again? Overwhelming. Exhausting. Strange. Anabella accepted the wine he poured for her. Thank you for arranging everything. You're my wife. Your success reflects on both of us. Zhang sat across from her, and servants appeared with food, dishes she didn't recognize, but that smelled incredible. Tell me about your classes. They talked through dinner, a surprisingly easy conversation about economics and business theory. Zhang had opinions on everything, sharp insights born from decades of practical experience. He challenged her perspectives, made her defend her positions, but listened when she pushed back. You're smarter than you pretend, Anabella said finally, halfway through dessert. And you're more confident than you realize, Zhang countered. You debated merger strategies with me like you weren't terrified I'd be offended by disagreement. Should I have been? No. His expression softened. I value intelligence, Anabella. Sycophants are easy to find. Partners who challenge me are rare. The word partners hung between them, loaded with meaning neither examined too closely. The days fell into a pattern. Classes in the morning, language lessons in the afternoon, combat training in the evening. Dinners with Zhang where they talked about everything except the strange nature of their arrangement. Nights alone in her room, listening to him move around the penthouse, wondering what he thought about when he looked at her. 3 weeks after the wedding, everything changed during a simple dinner conversation. I need you at a business meeting tomorrow night, Zhang said casually over soup dumplings. Anabella froze mid-bite. Why? Because several associates are questioning why I suddenly acquired a wife. Your presence confirms the marriage is real and that you're under my protection. I don't speak enough Mandarin for business meetings. You won't need to speak much. Just sit beside me, look confident, and remember everything Wei taught you about projecting strength. Zhang's eyes met hers. Can you do that? It wasn't really a question. Anabella nodded. Yes. The meeting took place in a private room at one of Shanghai's most exclusive restaurants. 8 men sat around a table, all older, all radiating power and danger. Zhang introduced her simply as my wife, Anabella, and claimed the seat at the head of the table. She sat to his right, hyper-aware of every eye assessing her. The conversation flowed in rapid Mandarin that she could barely follow. But she watched faces, read body language, noted who deferred to Zhang and who challenged him. One man in particular, heavy-set with cruel eyes, kept glancing at her with something that made her skin crawl. Halfway through the meal, he spoke in English clearly meant for her to understand. Tell me, Zhang, where did you find your exotic pet? How much did she cost? The room went silent. Anabella felt Zhang tense beside her, but before he could respond, she leaned forward with a smile that showed all her teeth. I cost exactly 300,000 yuan and 1 marriage proposal, she said sweetly. Though I'm curious what you'd be worth. A man who speaks English to insult someone in front of their face seems too stupid to command much value. The cruel-eyed man's face turned purple. Zhang's hand found hers under the table, squeezed once, whether in warning or approval, she couldn't tell. My wife is correct, Zhang said coldly, switching to English as well. Disrespect toward her is disrespect toward me. I trust that won't happen again, Chen. Chen, not the same Chen from the warehouse, but clearly related by temperament, glared at her. She should learn her place. Her place, Zhang said, his voice dropping to something dangerous, is beside me. Question that again, and we'll have a very different conversation. The meeting continued, tense and uncomfortable. When it finally ended, Zhang guided her out with a hand on her lower back, protective and possessive. In the car, he remained silent until they were halfway home. That was reckless, he said finally. He insulted me. And you. He did. But you made an enemy tonight. I seem to be good at that. Anabella turned to face him. Would you have preferred I stayed silent? Zhang's eyes gleamed in the passing streetlights. No, he admitted. I preferred you remind everyone that my wife has claws. Something in his tone made her heart beat faster. I did it for me, not for you. I know. He reached over, tucked a curl behind her ear in that gentle gesture that was becoming familiar. That's what makes it perfect. That night, sleep eluded her completely. Around 2 in the morning, Anabella gave up and went to the kitchen for water. She found Zhang already there, shirtless, revealing a torso marked with scars she'd never seen, thin lines across his ribs, a puckered circular mark on his shoulder. Bullet wound, he said, following her gaze. 12 years ago. Someone thought killing me would be easy. It looks like it hurt. Everything worth surviving hurts. Zhang poured water for both of them. Can't sleep. Adrenaline from the meeting. And from wondering if Chen will try to retaliate. He might. But he knows the cost would be catastrophic. Zhang moved closer, and Anabella's breath caught at the intimacy of standing this close to him, in the dark, with his scarred skin visible and vulnerable. You handled yourself well tonight, Anabella. I was proud. Proud of me insulting your business associate? Proud of you standing your ground. His hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing her skin. You're stronger than you realize. I'm terrified most of the time, she confessed. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Zhang's eyes searched hers, and she could see him holding back, restraining himself. I want to kiss you. But I won't unless you say yes. Anabella's mind raced. This man was her husband, her protector, her captor, her partner, all simultaneously. He was too old for her, too dangerous, too complicated. But he'd kept every promise, respected every boundary, and looked at her like she was something precious rather than property. Yes, she whispered. His kiss was gentle, controlled, nothing like she'd expected. His lips were soft against hers, his hand cradling her face like she might break. When he pulled back, his breathing was slightly uneven. Go to sleep, Anabella, he said roughly. Before I forget how to be a gentleman. She fled to her room, heart pounding, lips tingling, wondering when exactly she'd started wanting her husband to be less of a gentleman and more of something else entirely. If you're enjoying Anabella's journey, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The next morning, Anabella woke to find a velvet box on her breakfast tray. Inside lay a delicate necklace, a single diamond pendant that caught the morning light and scattered it across her walls like captured stars. The note was brief, for standing your ground. Wear it when you want to remind yourself you're stronger than your fears. Z. She traced the diamond with one finger, remembering the kiss, the way his scarred skin had felt under her palms when she'd steadied herself against his chest. The way he'd pulled back even though she'd seen the desire in his eyes, respecting boundaries he'd promised to honor. Wei noticed the necklace during training that afternoon and grunted approvingly. Mr. Zhang has good taste. Now, show me what you remember about defensive knife work. The training had intensified over the past weeks. Wei drilled her relentlessly on pressure points, escape techniques, how to turn an attacker's momentum against them. Today he added something new, a gun. Just hold it, he instructed, placing the weapon in her hands. Feel the weight. Respect what it can do. Anabella stared at the cold metal, her stomach churning. I don't want to shoot anyone. Wanting to and being able to are different things. In Mr. Zhang's world, hesitation gets people killed. You don't have to want it. You just have to be capable when the moment comes. She thought about that during dinner with Zhang, who asked about her classes and listened intently to her opinions on international trade regulations. He never mentioned the necklace. He never referenced the kiss. But his eyes lingered on her throat where the diamond rested against her skin, and something heated passed between them that made her pulse quicken. Chen reached out, Zhang said finally, setting down his wine glass. He wants to apologize for his disrespect. Do you believe him? No. But I believe he's smart enough to know pushing further would be costly. Zhang's expression hardened. Still, I'm increasing your security detail. Chen doesn't have the patience for long-term planning, but his nephew is more calculating. I won't risk your safety. I have way and combat training. I can handle myself. Against 3 warehouse thugs, yes. Against professional killers. Zhang shook his head. You're brave, Anabella, but bravery without backup is just another word for dead. The bluntness should have scared her. Instead, it made her feel seen, like he understood exactly what she was capable of and where she needed protection. That night she dreamed of gunshots and blood, of hands grabbing her in the dark, of Zhang's cold eyes turning warm as he pulled her close. She woke gasping, tangled in silk sheets, and found herself walking across the hall before conscious thought caught up. Zhang's door was open. He sat by the window in loose sleeping pants and nothing else, his scarred torso painted silver by moonlight. He turned when she entered, no surprise in his expression, like he'd been waiting. Nightmare. Something like that. Anabella moved closer, drawn by something she didn't want to name. Do you ever have them? Every night. His admission was quiet. Men like me don't sleep peacefully. We just pretend better than most. She sat in the chair across from him, studying the lines of his face, the silver in his hair, the way he looked at her like she was a puzzle he was determined to solve. Why me, really? You could have anyone. Someone younger, more sophisticated, more convenient. Zhang finished. I don't want convenient, Anabella. Convenient is boring. Convenient doesn't challenge me or make me think twice about my decisions. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You make me want to be better than the monster I've become. That's worth more than convenience. I'm not sure I can make anyone better. I can barely figure out my own life. Then we'll be disasters together. The corner of his mouth lifted, almost a smile, more than she usually got. Come here. She should have stayed put. Should have maintained the distance that kept things safe and uncomplicated. Instead, she crossed to him and let him pull her onto his lap, her legs draped over his thighs, his arm around her waist anchoring her in place. Is this okay? He murmured against her hair. Yes. More than okay. It felt like the first time she'd been held in months, the first time someone had offered comfort without expecting something in return. They sat like that for an hour, maybe more, Zhang's hand tracing absent patterns on her hip while she listened to his heartbeat, steady, strong, alive. When she finally returned to her room, she slept dreamlessly for the first time since her father's death. The change between them was subtle but undeniable. Zhang found excuses to touch her, a hand on her lower back as they entered rooms, fingers brushing hers when he handed her wine, standing close enough that she could feel his body heat. Anabella responded in kind, straightening his tie before meetings, letting her hand linger on his shoulder when she leaned past him, meeting his eyes across crowded rooms and letting him see the want building inside her. Mrs. Lin noticed during a Mandarin lesson, smiled knowingly, and said something in rapid Chinese that made Anabella blush even though she only caught every third word. She says you look at Mr. Zhang like he hung the moon, the driver Chen translated later, his stoic expression cracking into something almost amused. And he looks at you like you're the moon. That's ridiculous, Anabella muttered, but her cheeks burned. Wei was more direct. Whatever is happening between you and Mr. Zhang is making him sloppy. Yesterday he missed an important call because he was watching you train. Fix it or stop it. Distracted men make mistakes and mistakes get people killed. But neither of them knew how to stop what had started. Zhang began joining her morning coffee, appearing in the kitchen already dressed for work, sitting across from her in comfortable silence. He asked about her childhood in Lagos, her dreams before her father's gambling destroyed everything, what she wanted from life beyond survival. I wanted to build something, she admitted one morning. A business, maybe. Something that was mine, that I created from nothing. Proof that I was more than my circumstances. You still can, Zhang said immediately. After graduation, I'll provide capital for whatever venture you want to pursue. Consider it an investment in my wife's ambitions. You'd trust me with your money? I'd trust you with my life. He said it so casually, like it wasn't the most significant thing anyone had ever said to her. You're smart, driven, and you understand desperation, which means you'll never take success for granted. That's a better foundation than most entrepreneurs have. Anabella set down her coffee cup, emotions swirling too fast to process. Why are you so good to me? Because you deserve it. And because he stopped, seemed to wrestle with something internal, then continued, because somewhere in the past month, you stopped being a convenient arrangement and became the best part of my day. Coming home to you, talking with you, watching you grow stronger and more confident, it reminds me what I've been missing all these years. What's that? Partnership. Companionship. His eyes met hers, dark and intense. The possibility of something real. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Zhang. Lei, he interrupted softly. My given name is Lei. I'd like you to use it. Lei. The name felt intimate on her tongue. I think I'm falling for you, and it terrifies me because none of this was supposed to be real. He stood, moved around the table, and pulled her to her feet. His hands framed her face, thumbs stroking her cheekbones. It became real the moment you walked into that hotel and said yes. Maybe even before, in that warehouse when I saw you refuse to give up. Let it terrify you, Anabella. Let it be messy and complicated and imperfect. Just don't let it stop you from feeling. When he kissed her this time, there was nothing gentle about it. His mouth claimed hers with barely restrained hunger, one hand sliding into her hair while the other pressed her body against his. Anabella gasped and opened for him, tasting coffee and desire and something desperate that matched the ache building inside her. Come to my room tonight, Lei whispered against her lips. Not because you have to. Not because of our arrangement. Because you want me as much as I want you. Yes, she breathed. Yes. But the universe had other plans. The attack came that afternoon during her journey back from the university. Chen was driving, the security car following close behind, the route familiar and supposedly safe. Anabella was reviewing notes from her economics lecture when the first bullet shattered the rear window. Chen cursed in Mandarin and floored the accelerator. Anabella dropped to the floor, heart exploding in her chest, as more gunfire erupted around them. The security car rammed their attackers, metal shrieking against metal, and Chen swerved through traffic with terrifying precision. Stay down, he shouted in English, one hand on the wheel, the other pulling a gun from beneath his seat. They made it 3 more blocks before the tire blew. The car spun, jumped the curb, and slammed into a concrete barrier with a force that rattled Anabella's bones. Her head cracked against something hard, and stars exploded across her vision. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard car doors opening, footsteps approaching. Chen was slumped over the wheel, blood streaming from a gash on his temple. The security detail was engaged with other attackers 50 yards back. Anabella fumbled for the door handle, every instinct screaming to run. But Wei's training kicked in: assess, adapt, act. She grabbed Chen's fallen gun, checked the safety like she'd been taught, and positioned herself with a clear line of sight through the shattered window. 2 men approached the car, weapons drawn. Professional. Focused. Not Chen's thugs from the warehouse, these were experienced killers. Come out slowly, one called in accented English. Make it easy and we won't hurt you. Lies. Everything Wei had taught her about reading intent screamed that these men planned to hurt her regardless. She waited until they were close enough, then fired through the window. The recoil shocked her, the sound deafening in the confined space, but she saw the first man stumble back, clutching his shoulder. The second one dove for cover, returning fire that punched holes in the car's frame. Anabella squeezed off 2 more shots, forcing him to stay down, buying time for the security team to reach them. When they did, the fight was brutal and efficient. 3 more attackers down. 1 captured alive. Chin regained consciousness and immediately tried to apologize for the ambush. But Anabella barely hurt him. Her hands were shaking violently, the guns suddenly impossibly heavy. She'd shot someone. Maybe killed them. The reality crashed over her in waves of nausea and shock. Lay arrived within minutes, his motorcade screeching to a halt amid the chaos. He was out of the car before it fully stopped, scanning the scene with those cold, calculating eyes until they found her. Then something cracked in his expression: fear, rage, relief all at once. He reached her in 3 strides, hands running over her body checking for injuries, eyes wild. Are you hurt? Anabella, look at me. Are you hurt? I shot someone, she whispered. Lay, I shot. You survived. He pulled her against his chest, one hand cradling her head, his heart thundering beneath her ear. You magnificent, terrifying woman. You survived. His people handled the scene with frightening efficiency, police paid off, witnesses redirected, evidence managed. Lay carried Anabella to his car personally, refusing to let her go even when she insisted she could walk. In the back seat, he held her while she shook, whispering in Mandarin words she didn't understand, but that sounded like prayers. At the penthouse, he dismissed the staff and led her to his bathroom. He started the shower, adjusted the temperature, then gently began undressing her. His hands were steady even though she could see the fury barely contained beneath his calm exterior. Lay, let me take care of you. His voice was rough. Please, Anabella. Let me do this one thing. She nodded, too exhausted to argue. He stripped off his own clothes and guided her under the spray, supporting her when her legs trembled. He washed her hair with careful hands, rinsed away the blood and dirt and trauma, then just held her under the warm water until she stopped shaking. I was in a meeting, he said finally, his voice breaking. I was negotiating shipping contracts when I got the call that you'd been attacked. I've never been that terrified in my entire life. I'm okay. Chin got hurt, but I'm okay. You shot an armed attacker and held off 2 more until help arrived. You're more than okay. Lay turned her to face him, water streaming between them. You're incredible. And I'm going to find whoever ordered this attack and make sure they regret being born. The cold fury in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel safe, protected by someone who would burn the world down to keep her secure. Don't leave me alone tonight, she whispered. Never. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips, soft, reverent kisses that tasted like promises. You're mine, Anabella. Mine to protect, mine to cherish. And heaven help anyone who tries to take you from me. They moved to his bed, still damp from the shower, and Lay pulled her against his chest, arms wrapped around her like he could shield her from the entire world. Anabella burrowed into his warmth, listening to his heartbeat, feeling safe for the first time since the attack. The man I shot, she said quietly. Did he die? Does it matter? Yes. Lay was silent for a moment. He'll live. You wounded him, nothing more. The other attackers weren't as fortunate. My security team doesn't leave loose ends. Good. The word surprised her, but she meant it. They came to hurt me. Maybe kill me. I'm glad your people stopped them. You're becoming ruthless. Lay's hand stroked her back in soothing circles. I should feel guilty about that. Instead, I'm proud. What does that say about us? That we're perfectly matched in all the ways that matter. He tilted her face up, his expression serious. I need you to understand something, Anabella. After today, there's no going back. You've proven you can survive in my world, which means my enemies now see you as both a target and a threat. The safest thing would be to send you away, somewhere remote where no one would find you. But her heart clenched with sudden fear. But I'm too selfish to let you go. His thumb traced her lower lip. I want you here, with me, despite the danger. I want to come home to you every night and wake up beside you every morning. I want to watch you build that business you dream about and argue with you about economic theory over breakfast. I want everything, Anabella, and I want it with you. Then take it, she whispered. Take everything. I'm yours, Lay. Completely. His kiss was different this time, claiming, possessive, filled with weeks of restrained desire finally unleashed. Anabella kissed him back with equal hunger, fingers tangling in his silver-streaked hair, body arching against his. When his mouth moved to her throat, she gasped and tilted her head back, offering herself completely. Are you sure? Lay's voice was ragged against her skin. After everything that happened today, I can wait. I will wait as long as you need. I need you, Anabella said fiercely. I need to feel alive and safe and wanted. I need to remember that surviving is about more than just not dying. Make love to me, Lay. Please. He did, with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes and a passion that made her forget everything except the feeling of his skin against hers, his whispered words in Mandarin and English, the way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. When it was over, they lay tangled together, breathing hard, and Anabella finally understood what it meant to choose someone completely. I love you, she whispered into the darkness. I don't know when it happened, but I love you. Lay's arms tightened around her. I've loved you since you called that businessman too stupid to command value while bleeding from a head wound. Maybe even before, when you fought those men with a kitchen knife rather than surrender. You're everything I didn't know I needed, Anabella. Everything. The captured attacker revealed under interrogation that Chen's nephew had orchestrated the attack, a calculated move to destabilize Lay's operations by removing his new wife. It was a miscalculation that cost Chen's nephew his life and his uncle's business empire, both of which Lay dismantled with surgical precision over the next 72 hours. Anabella learned about it during breakfast, reading the headlines on Lay's tablet while he took a business call. The business pages called it a hostile takeover. The criminal underworld knew it for what it was: absolute retribution executed with zero mercy. You destroyed them, she said when he returned to the table. I eliminated a threat to my wife. Lay's expression was calm, but his eyes held that cold calculation she'd first seen in the warehouse. Anyone who comes after you will face the same consequences. I'm not a good man, Anabella. I never pretended to be. But I protect what's mine with everything I have. I know who you are, she said quietly. And I'm not afraid anymore. You should be. At least a little. Maybe. She smiled, reaching across to take his hand. But I think you should be a little afraid of me too. After all, I shot an armed attacker and held my own until reinforcements arrived. Your wife has claws, remember? Lay's laugh was genuine and warm. How could I forget? You've been threatening to scratch me since the day we met. Their relationship shifted after that night, deeper, more intimate, built on complete trust and understanding. Lay included her in business discussions, valued her insights, treated her as a true partner. Anabella threw herself into her studies and training with renewed focus, determined to be worthy of the faith he'd placed in her. Wei nodded approvingly during their sessions. You move better now. More confident. Good. Confidence keeps you alive. Mrs. Lin smiled during Mandarin lessons and praised Anabella's rapidly improving fluency. Mr. Zhang teaches you at night, yes? This is good. Language of love is best teacher. Chen recovered from his injuries and returned to work with a fierce loyalty to Anabella that bordered on reverence. You saved both our lives that day, he told her in halting English. I owe you everything. 3 months after the attack, during a quiet dinner at home, Anabella realized something had changed in her body. She'd missed her cycle, twice now. The nausea she'd attributed to stress might be something else entirely. Lay noticed her distraction immediately. What's wrong? I think, she set down her fork carefully. I think I might be pregnant. The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications. Then Lay's face transformed into something she'd never seen before: pure, unfiltered joy. You're sure? Not completely. But all the signs. She pressed a hand to her stomach. Lay, this wasn't part of the plan. We haven't even been married 4 months, and... He crossed to her, dropped to his knees beside her chair, and placed his hand over hers. This is exactly part of the plan. Maybe earlier than expected, but perfect nonetheless. He looked up at her, and she saw moisture in his eyes. A child, Anabella. Our child. Proof that something good can grow from impossible circumstances. The pregnancy was confirmed the next day. Lay insisted on the best doctors, the finest prenatal care, every possible precaution. He also cut back his working hours, determined to be present for every milestone. "I'm 63 years old," he said when Anabella protested that he was being overprotective. "I never thought I'd have a family. Now that I do, I'm not missing a single moment." The pregnancy progressed smoothly despite Anabella's concerns about juggling classes and morning sickness. Lay proved to be surprisingly attentive, rubbing her feet during late-night study sessions, bringing her strange craving combinations without judgment, talking to her growing belly in Mandarin while she laughed at his earnestness. "You're going to be an incredible father," she told him one night. Watching him read a parenting book with the same intense focus, he applied to business negotiations. "I'm going to try." He set the book aside and pulled her close. "I want our child to have everything I didn't: safety, love, parents who actually want them. And I want them to have you, Anabella. The strongest, bravest, most remarkable woman I've ever known." "Stop, you're going to make me cry, and pregnancy already makes me cry at everything." "Then cry." He kissed her temple. "I'll hold you through every tear and every joy for the rest of our lives." Their daughter was born on a rainy April evening after 12 hours of labor that Lay endured at Anabella's side, letting her squeeze his hand hard enough to leave bruises. When the doctor placed their baby in Anabella's arms, Lay actually cried, silent tears streaming down his face as he looked at his wife and daughter with wonder. "She's perfect," he whispered. "You're both perfect." They named her Maya, a name that worked in both their cultures, a bridge between their worlds. Lay held her with the careful reverence of someone who'd never expected such a gift, and Anabella watched her ruthless crime lord husband transform into the gentlest father imaginable. The penthouse became a home filled with baby laughter and late-night feedings and the ordinary chaos of new parenthood. Lay reduced his business involvement even further, delegating more to trusted lieutenants so he could spend time with his family. "You're going soft," Anabella teased one morning, finding him singing Mandarin lullabies to Maya at dawn. "Completely." He smiled at her, this man who'd once terrified her, now looking at her like she'd given him the universe. Business 6 months later, focusing on helping foreign companies navigate Chinese markets. Her unique perspective, African, female, married to one of Shanghai's most powerful men, gave her credibility in multiple communities. Within a year, she was profitable. Within 2, she was expanding. Lay celebrated every milestone with champagne and pride, treating her business success with the same importance as his own deals. They became a formidable team, her legitimate business connections complementing his less conventional operations, his protection allowing her to take risks other entrepreneurs couldn't afford. Maya grew into a precocious toddler who spoke Mandarin to her father and English to her mother, and possessed her father's calculating intelligence and her mother's fierce determination. Lay doted on her shamelessly, taking her to the office for important meetings that consisted of letting her play with his paperweights while he worked. "She's going to be absolutely spoiled," Anabella complained without much conviction, watching Lay build an elaborate pillow fort for their daughter. "Spoiled but strong," Lay countered. "She has you as a mother. She'll know how to fight for what she wants." 3 years into their marriage, during a quiet evening after Maya had been put to bed, Anabella curled against Lay on their couch and reflected on the impossible journey that had brought them here. "Do you remember the warehouse?" she asked softly. "Every detail." Lay's arm tightened around her. "You were bleeding, terrified, and still fighting like you had nothing to lose." "I didn't. I had nothing except anger and desperation." "And now?" Anabella looked around their home, at the toys scattered across the floor, the business awards on her wall, the family photos Lay insisted on displaying despite his hatred of sentiment. She thought about the life they'd built, the love they'd found, the impossible becoming inevitable. "Now I have everything," she said simply. "A husband who sees me as an equal. A daughter who makes every day an adventure. A business I built from nothing. A life I chose rather than one forced on me." Lay turned her face toward his eyes soft with emotion. "You gave me everything too. Purpose beyond power. Love beyond ambition. A reason to be more than the monster I'd become. He kissed her gently. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Anabella. The absolute best. Even though I'm decades younger and make terrible jokes and argue with you about everything, especially because of those things. Lay smiled, really smiled, and she marveled at how this expression had gone from rare to constant. You keep me human. You remind me every day that strength isn't just about control and power, it's about choosing to be vulnerable with the right person. I love you, Anabella whispered. My impossible, complicated, wonderful husband. And I love you. Lay kissed her again, deeper this time, filled with the passion that hadn't dimmed despite time and familiarity. My fierce, brilliant, extraordinary wife. Later that night, lying in their bed with Lay asleep beside her, Anabella thought about the woman she'd been 3 years ago, desperate, terrified, fighting in a warehouse with no hope and no future. She thought about the choice she'd made in that hotel room, the trust she'd extended to a strange, powerful man who'd offered her protection in exchange for partnership. She'd been so afraid then. Afraid of him, of the future, of losing herself in a marriage built on necessity rather than love. But necessity had transformed into something real. Fear had evolved into trust. And the man she'd married out of desperation had become her partner, her protector, her home. The journey hadn't been easy. They'd faced attacks and enemies, building something meaningful from the wreckage, and choosing love even when logic suggested otherwise. They'd survived together. They'd built something beautiful. And tomorrow, they'd wake up and do it all over again, imperfect, impossible, and absolutely perfect for each other. If Anabella and Lay's story touched your heart, do me a favor, hit that like button, drop a comment telling me what you thought, and subscribe so you never miss another incredible story. These characters may be fiction, but the emotions they made you feel? Those are real. See you in the next one.